Welcome to the Graces of Catholic Education podcast. I'm your host, Maria Pardini, and in this trailer episode, I'll share my personal journey as a proud product of Philly Catholic education's rich legacy. You'll hear all about my Delco roots, my educational journey, and most importantly, how this podcast was born from a passion to celebrate the transformative power of Catholic education in the city of brotherly love. So join us as we explore the stories, values, and legacy of Catholic education. Stay tuned for the trailer and don't miss our full series launching on July 7th. Hi, Philly faithful. My name is Maria Pardini, and welcome to the Graces of Catholic Education podcast, a place where grace shapes Catholic education one future saint at a time. The mission of this podcast is to build a faith-filled place for Philly's Catholic educators to share their faith, hear innovative practices for today's challenging classrooms, and be inspired by others who are tackling this wild and blessed ride of Catholic education. Join us as we explore the grace that guides us in forming the hearts and minds of Philly's future saints. Today, I'd like to share some of my educational story with you and how the Graces of Catholic Education podcast came to be. And every good Philly Catholic conversation starts with roots, schools, and legacies, and mine is no different. So that's where we're going to start. In fact, we're going to start every episode of the Graces of Catholic Education podcast with the very same questions. What parish are you from? What grade school did you go to? What high school did you go to? What year did you graduate? And based on that information, we have now determined where you're from. And then the conversation usually goes something like this. Do you know so-and-so? Are you cousins with so-and-so? I think I went to school with your aunt. Was your mom my high school teacher or your dad my Little League coach? These stories, these questions, and the answers that go with them are the heartbeat of the legacy of Catholic education in the city of Philadelphia. So here I go. I'm from St. John Neumann Parish in Bryn Mawr. I went to St. Coleman John Neumann grade school in Bryn Mawr. I went to Archbishop John Carroll High School in Radnor. 2 years, it was all girls. My last 2 years, it was combined. And I graduated in 1988. Based on that, you should now be asking me if I'm from Havertown, Bryn Mawr, or Ardmore. The answer is Havertown. And now we can play the name game. Do you know? And if you and I played the name game, I'm sure we would have so many connections. So I want you to feel free at any time to reach out to me on my Facebook page or Instagram at the Graces of Catholic Education, or even email me. And I'd be more than happy to play the name game with you. We might jokingly refer to all of this as the name game. And I know for some people, it's probably super annoying, especially if you're not from this area. I know my first guest, Dr. McLaughlin, just rolls his eyes when it starts getting played. But I actually think it's more than a game. Like I mentioned before, it's part of our vernacular in Philly. It's how we not only identify ourselves, but it's how we connect ourselves to each other. And I think what it's really all about is legacy. Catholic education here isn't just about schools. It's a tradition that binds generations to each other and helps us to realize that we are all part of a much bigger picture. Being able to raise my children in the same Catholic school system that my parents were a part of, that I was a part of, that they were and are still a part of, and God willing, my children and hopefully even my great-grandchildren will be a part of, makes Catholic education in Philly a multi-generational experience. Handing down the legacy from generation to generation is one of my life's greatest blessings. And me starting this podcast serves to honor that legacy. And hopefully it will give all the people who know and love education in this great city a place to come together and bear witness to the miracles that are happening in our schools every single day. I'll never forget the exact moment when I knew, no matter what, that if I ever had children, I would be sending them to Catholic school. The date was September 11th, 2001. I was teaching in the Owen J. Roberts School District. It was just like any other Tuesday. But there was a knock on my door, and one of our staff members handed me a printed out copy of an email and told me to read it. And she was waiting at the door until I did. It just said 2 planes had hit the World Trade Center in New York City, and they believed that it was a terror attack. And there was not a lot more information at the time. Now, you'll remember, some of you will remember that in 2001, technology wasn't great. We were also told not to talk to the kids about it and to just go about our day. And we all know that that was way easier said than done. But something was definitely off that day, obviously for many, many reasons. But it wasn't until I went home later that night and in the days that followed that the realization hit me. I realized what was missing in school that day, besides the obvious communication and technology needs that we found out we needed. It was prayer. Prayer was the thing that was missing. Because you know what? I had been in school for other major disasters. I had been in school when the president was shot. I was in school when the Pope got shot. I was in school and actually watched live on TV in my sophomore geometry class the Challenger disaster happening. And each time either of those things happened, any of those things happened, the principal of the school would get on the loudspeaker and say, there's been some type of a tragedy. And now we're going to stop everything that we're doing and we're going to pray. And the whole school would stop and we would pray together. And that's what I knew was missing from the experience of 9/11 for me. And in that moment, I knew that if I ever had children and they were in school and something bad happened, that I wanted prayer to be a part of their memory of it. That experience showed me firsthand the power of the legacy of Catholic education and how important it was to me to pass that on to my own children. That legacy didn't just shape me as a student, it really guided my calling as an educator. So let me take you through my journey in education and how I wound up in the place that we all affectionately call the twos. I've always been a special educator at heart. Right out of college, I took a job as a special educator in the public school system. At the time, there were really no special ed jobs in Catholic education. So I knew that if I wanted to go into special ed, I was going to have to go into the into the public schools. And God, who really has an incredible sense of humor, planted my feet in the Owen J. Roberts School District in far, far, far western Chester County. So let me tell you, taking this little Delco girl out to rural Chester County every day felt like I was being transplanted to outer space. It was such a new experience. Everything about it was new. I was a new teacher. I was in a school that had never had special education students in it before, because when they were identified with special ed, they went to another school in their own district. So I was new, the kids were new, and it was a challenge, but it was one of the most rewarding experiences I ever had professionally. Because we were doing inclusion back in the day of 1996, I think is what it was. But that's where I had the privilege of working with some of the best teachers I have ever seen, who guided and helped shape this rookie teacher into a fierce advocate for the inclusion of all students. I still have relationships with so many of the teachers that I taught with, especially the special education teachers that worked in the district. We were led by the OG of all of special education in Owen J. Roberts. Her name is Sheila Benich Hardin, and I hope that she's watching, because she really was my first mentor, and she really showed all of us, not just me, by the power of her example, what an exceptional teacher is in the lives of her students. She advocated for every single one of her students as if they were her very own. And the lessons that she taught me and the skills that she modeled for me are still probably the most important tools in my toolbox. So if you're listening, like I said, Sheila, thank you. And I hope to have you as a guest on the podcast. So over the years after I left ONJ, I taught in all types of settings in special education. I was in approved private schools for emotionally disturbed students at the elementary level and the high school level. And if you ever really want to hear some funny, good stories about education, ask me about those days at the community school and TCA. I taught in schools for multi-handicapped students, and I also taught in regular learning support classrooms within the regular education public schools. And I took something out of each one of those experiences. And I really learned to meet kids where they are, to see their potential, and to help them and to fight for them for their place, not only in education, but in the real world too. So after my second child, I was afforded the blessing of being able to be a stay-at-home mom for a while. And I loved being a stay-at-home mom. And I had the blessing of being able to place my oldest son, Jack, in our parish school in Havertown, because there was never a doubt that he wasn't going to go to a Catholic school. So he started pre-K 4 at Sacred Heart in Havertown, which is actually where my mom was the very first lay teacher to ever teach at Sacred Heart School. So again, there's that sense of legacy. My mom taught there in 1955. She taught one of the deacons, God rest his soul, Deacon John Suplee, in her third grade class. So we sent Jack there. My mom and dad were so proud. They were married in Sacred Heart Church. But then what I kind of decided that I needed to get back into the workforce. And for a couple of years, I actually sold real estate, and I loved selling real estate. It was great. It was fun. It was exciting. It was challenging, and I really loved it. But I knew that something was missing. I was missing the relationship that educators have the privilege of having with their students, and the beauty of the thing that happens when you actually see that light bulb go off in your students' minds. And you're like, they didn't know that before they sat down at my table, and now they know it. I missed that. So I knew I was going to go back to education. And when I decided to go back to education, I knew there was absolutely no way I was going back to the public school system. I probably would have been fired. But my heart was telling me that I needed to become a Catholic educator. So that's where I was. I started subbing in some of our local Catholic grade schools, Sacred Heart being one of them. My alma mater, Saints Coleman John Newman, was another. I worked in the Independence Mission schools when they first started in the Archdiocese. And then I got a permanent job at Monsignor Bonner and Archbishop Prendergast High School in the program that helped kids who needed a little bit of extra academic help in our Catholic schools in the high school. And I loved Bonner and Prendy. I loved the people that I worked with. I loved the students. I absolutely adore high school students. I think they are such a gift to the world, actually. I think they just have such joy, and they're innocent, but yet they think they're worldly, and they're just, the perspective that they offer to us is unmatched, and I love it. And then I actually got to have the privilege of working at the Jesu School, which is an independent Catholic grade school right in the heart of North Philly. Very close. It's actually attached to St. Joe's Prep. And the people that were at Jesu, they were like my own special family. But then I got a phone call. Dr. Andrew McLaughlin, who was one of my principals back in the day in 1998, maybe, in the Owen J. Roberts School District, had retired and was working for the Archdiocese. And he called me with an offer, and he said, I have a job for you. And are you interested? So I said, well, send me the job description. I'll take a look at it. And he said, well, there really isn't a job description, but I know you'd be perfect for this job. And after some prayer and some trust and some strong consideration, I thought, you know what? I agree. I think it would be a great fit for me. So this is how I explain my job within the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. I work with teachers, principals, parents, pastors, and sometimes I'm even lucky enough to get to sit next to students in order to help them meet the needs of the diverse children that are the blessings of Catholic education. I get to help our schools become inclusive places where all children can have success. And that work opened my eyes to the challenges that our schools are facing. And it sparked an idea that really became the heart of the Graces of Catholic Education podcast. We have 102 elementary schools in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia. And let me tell you, each one of them is so incredibly different. We have schools in urban areas, in rural areas, and everywhere in between. Some serve really wealthy communities, and some serve communities where families invest everything in order to provide a Catholic education for their students. Every socioeconomic status and every kind of community is represented in the Archdiocese, and it really is a beautiful diversity. But I did see common threads too. Every school is wrestling with the ideas of how we're going to meet the needs of the challenging students that are in our classrooms. They come with such a wide range of abilities. And parents, thankfully, are bringing their students to Catholic schools. Parents are bringing their children with all kinds of needs to Catholic education, and thank God that they are, because these students belong here. All children deserve the beauty of a Catholic education, and families deserve to keep their children together in their own parish schools. But with that gift comes real work. Our teachers and our principals need strategies to meet the needs of all of those kids so that no one slips through the cracks. So I had an idea to rise to this challenge. I wrote a grant that was funded by the Ambassadors Fund for Catholic Education. And I want to give a big shout out to Andrew McCluskey from the Ambassadors Fund for supporting this incredible initiative. And I hope to have him as a guest on the podcast someday soon. So it's a two-pronged plan to help transform our schools. The first part focuses on principals and the work that they're going to do with their teachers and their faculties. They work with a coach from the ADAC group that will help them assess where their school stands within the framework of a multi-tiered system of support. We call that MTSS. And it helps them create specific, measurable goals where they can build a system where every student gets what they need to be successful. The second part is about the teachers. So each principal picked 1 to 2 teachers in his or her building to become full practitioners of universal design for learning. So when classrooms are designed in a universal way, they're designed for all students. And those teachers believe that given the right conditions and removing all of the barriers, or as many barriers as they can, that all children can succeed at a really high level. A strong MTSS model starts with a really good Tier 1 foundation. And the key to a really good Tier 1 foundation are universally designed classrooms. So this spring, those teachers, I think there's 24 of them, took an intensive graduate level class with the Novak Education Group. They met every 2 weeks on Zoom, where they dove into the principles of the theory of universal design for learning. But they also started making some small changes in their classroom that helped all students. This summer, in fact, we just finished, they're going to have 4 intensive days. We just finished 2 of them. And then in August, they're going to come back and have 2 more days of a workshop with our coach, where they have begun and will continue to redesign their classroom in a universally designed way, not just physically, but in how the content is going to be delivered so that all of those kids can be successful. This is huge. And again, I can't thank the Ambassadors Fund enough for funding this initiative. I don't really think that anything of this magnitude has been done in the Archdiocese before, and I'm blessed to be a part of it. And because of that, I knew this initiative needed a name. And I know I didn't want to, and we couldn't just slap 4 letters onto it and add it to the list of acronyms in education. I knew it needed its own special title. And as the Holy Spirit has done so many times, he kept planting the word grace in my head. So several years ago, I was really deeply inspired by one of my favorite people in the world, Sister Stephen Ann. Sister Stephen Ann has had a very profound impact on me in my professional journey and my personal life in the last several years. Sister was gifted to me at a time when I really needed her. And I hope to have her also as a guest on this podcast. But one time, she actually was on the board of the Jesus School, and she gave an in-service, kind of like a retreat, not really an in-service, a retreat for us at Jesus School. And her focus of that presentation to the faculty at Jesus was about the concept of grace. And since then, I fell in love with the word grace. I describe grace as the gift that God gives us to help us do the job that he is calling us to do. I also like to say that God gives us an unlimited amount of grace. It's a free gift, and he gives it willingly every single day. And he's willing to refill our tanks whenever we need it. We just have to open our hands and accept that grace. So since my time at OCE, I've had the incredible blessing of watching some of our awesome educators in action every single day. I get to go into classrooms. And I hear the same concern from so many of them. And they're afraid. They're afraid that they're not enough. They're afraid that they're not meeting the needs of the children that are sitting in front of them. It's not that they don't want certain students in their classes. It's just simply that they don't feel equipped, or they don't feel like they have the skills or the knowledge to meet the needs of all these diverse learners in front of them every day. And I have found myself repeating the same sentiment over and over and over again to them. And that prayer is to encourage them to take a deep breath and let God's grace fill them. That they know that they're doing right by their students, and that they are enough, and that God put those students in their classrooms because he believes that they are the teacher for that child at that specific time. God puts us where he wants our feet planted. And my prayer is that teachers realize and understand that. And what will help them realize and understand that is God's grace. So that prayer shaped what came next. I kept coming back to this word grace. And so with a little help from AI and a whole lot of grace, I decided to call the initiative Project Graces. And I even got an acronym in there. So GRACE stands for, in my mind, Growing Resilient, Adaptable Catholic Educators and Students. GRACE. Then I felt another little nudge, and I'm assuming it was the Holy Spirit at work again. And that was to share the miracles that I have the privilege of witnessing every day when I'm in classrooms all over the Archdiocese. The stories of the teachers and the principals and all those selfless people who are part of the legacy of Catholic education here in the city of brotherly love. And that was that I should start a podcast. I actually didn't even realize that the Holy Spirit knew what podcasts were, but apparently he does. So with some prayer and a little more tech help, the Graces of Catholic Education podcast was born. So this podcast is for Philly's Catholic educators, parents, students, coaches, donors, grandparents, and really anyone who loves Catholic education. It's a space for all of us to feel connected, to find inspiration, and know that we are all part of a bigger mission. Because teaching in Catholic schools is more than just a job. It's a vocation. We have 16,000 hours from kindergarten to 12th grade to get these future saints to heaven. And hopefully this podcast will be a place where we can all celebrate this very important mission. Now, you're probably wondering what this podcast might be like from week to week. So here's a peek for what's in store. Every other week, I'll release a new episode to a month featuring voices from our Philly Catholic educational community. Teachers, parents, principals, students, administrators, and Catholic influencers who live this mission every day. We'll dive into the joys, wrestle with the challenges, and uncover the graces that fuel our work. Sharing practical, faith-filled ideas for classrooms and the hopes and dreams that our special guests have in mind for the future of Catholic education. Because if there's one thing I've realized in my tenure at the TEWS, the future of Catholic education is bright. Every fifth episode or so, we're going to switch gears for a special edition. I like to call it the Philly Faith Legends. These episodes will feature someone who's given their entire life to the mission and vocation of Catholic education. Those unforgettable souls that we all know. And I'm sure you can picture one right now. That teacher or principal or parent or coach from your grade school or your high school who is just Philly Catholic education. Their faith and their heart and legacy have left a profound mark upon each one of you. I know it. So my first Philly Faith legend, is going to be two people that hold a very special place in my heart. And we're not going to just talk about how the traditional four walls of a classroom, but how what happens after the final bell rings is oftentimes just as important to what happens during the school day. And that the charisms in Catholic education aren't always within the school, but sometimes on the courts and in the fields that some of our students play on. So every episode will end with a fun little twist called the Philly Hot Seat. I put my guests into the Philly Hot Seat. They're going to face a series of rapid fire questions about Catholic education, Philly style. Think like favorite saint, favorite Catholic school tradition, favorite Catholic school hymn, favorite cheesesteak spot, things that make our school so special. So you're not going to want to miss that. So expect stories, strategies, and that Philly Catholic grit that makes up the heart of our schools. So before I wrap up, I want to leave you with an invitation to join me on this journey. It would be a blessing to be able to come into your cars and your kitchens and your gym workouts, wherever you might listen to your podcast. I'd love to be a part of it. So I want to also give us a little prayer. I'm so thankful to start this podcast with you, my Philly faithful. Whether you're a teacher, a parent, or someone who just loves our schools, you're going to find this podcast wherever you catch your favorite podcast. So please like, subscribe, follow, and share the Graces of Catholic Education with all of your friends and your school communities. And be sure to join me each week as we lean into God's grace together. So let's end with this little prayer. To all our faithful listeners, may God's grace fill you with the courage to stay faithful, stay fearless, and as always, stay Philly. Thank you. God bless, and I'll see you on the podcast.